Hello, friends. Welcome to my podcast. This is Damodaran, and the present podcast is on stress management. Now, all of us have experienced stress. All of us continue to experience stress. And that perhaps is some kind of a lowest common denominator if you want to live your life. I was once asked many years ago by a young person, only young people have the courage to ask these questions. He said, "Show me the person who has no stress." And I advised him, not lightheartedly, but seriously, that he should look at the death scene in one of the movies. When a patient is lying on the hospital bed, the machines are seen at the back, there are lines going zigzag, and then suddenly you find the line straightening out, and as the patient ceases to breathe, the line is absolutely straight. That is the state in which a human being has no stress. Till that line straightens, everyone has stress. So if everyone has stress, what do? Just pretend it doesn't exist? Ignore it? Allow it to feed on us? That's the wrong approach to dealing with stress. I'd earlier mentioned in one of my podcasts that time and technology are two things that you need to master. The third is stress. You ought to be the master. You must know that it exists, but not allow it to dominate you. Very recently, a legendary sportsman of yesteryears stoked a controversy when he said, "What is pressure?" People keep talking about pressure. I experienced no pressure when I was playing, and I don't think any player who enjoys the game should experience any kind of pressure. He was, of course, oversimplifying. For somebody who had bowled straight at the stumps for many years, this was a very, very wide ball, not even worth belonging to his armor. You can't make light of the problem. You can't say convert pressure to pleasure and all of that. I'll deal with that in a moment. But the first step clearly is recognizing that stress is something that we have to live with. Now, if we have to live with it and attempt to master it, what should we do? We should identify, first of all, the source of stress. What is causing stress? Is it something internal to us? Is it something that's external? Because there are different ways of managing different kinds of stress. If it is internal, we need to manage it ourselves. Yes, you can rely on professional help. You can confide in friends what is causing you the kind of problems that you're experiencing. But it's not something that you broadcast. It's not something about which you write articles saying that, I went through this stressful situation. You're not making life any easier for other persons. If it's external, there are different ways of dealing with it. Is that something that you necessarily have to have as a part of your life? If it's a person that is causing you stress, do you need to continue to deal with that person on a day in, day out basis? Or is there some other way of distancing yourself from that person and thereby distancing yourself from that stress? There are several variations on the same theme, but each one has to figure out what his or her source of stress is and learn to address it. Once you identify what it is, ask yourself another question, and I have found this very useful. Is the problem that is confronting you something that is life-threatening? Is it something that is career-threatening? Is it something that is existential, that will cause you to not be the kind of person you are, which will cause, let's say, mental and physical harm to you? Loss of job is, of course, important. All these are major possibilities. Then you need to ask yourself, should any of these things happen, you lose your job, or you're in a life-threatening situation, are you able to manage that? Are you able to look at a future in which you don't have that job, don't have that physical facility that was perhaps neutralized by some illness, etc.? And can you still manage? Maybe not as well as you did earlier, that doesn't matter. If it's a loss of a job, can you put food on the table by doing something else? Maybe not as much food, maybe not as rich food as you were when you had that job, as you could enjoy at that time. Maybe your clothes are getting a little less costly. Maybe the car which you drive, or maybe you don't drive a car any longer once you lose a job. Or if you have a car, you have to downsize it, the house gets downsized, but you can continue to live. And if you tell yourself that that is the kind of problem that I can tackle and I can put behind me and I can go on with life, every smaller problem gets addressed easily because you know that you have what it takes to address the major problems that you confronted and you managed to overcome. The next thing you need to do to manage stress is to ask yourself, do I need to be in this situation which is causing stress? Stress is often situational, it is contextual. Do you have to be there? Can you take yourself out of there, place yourself somewhere else? You are, let us say, in a toxic work situation. Day in and day out, it's taking a toll on your health, and you believe sooner rather than later, it could take a toll on your life the way it's going. None of the good work that you do is being noticed. All the bad work that you do, and all of us do good work and bad work, is getting disproportionate attention. And then you ask yourself, I have the rest of my life to live. Do I have to live in this atmosphere of toxicity? And if I don't have to do that, if there are choices outside, clearly as you leave that situation, you also leave some stress behind. You don't carry the stress when you move out of a stressful situation. Nowadays, it's becoming fashionable for people to talk about how they are stressed, how the world is conspiring against them, and things of that nature. I once had a situation in which a man in his early 40s came to see me. His business was going through a bad time. It was post 2008. He was a second generation industrialist. The orders had dried up, the markets had disappeared. And when he came to see me, even before he had pulled up a chair and sat down, he said, I feel like I have been struck by lightning. My response was, and I didn't allow him to proceed further. My response was, how many persons have you seen who have been struck by lightning and they lived to tell the tale? He said he hadn't seen any. He had read of persons struck by lightning who had lost their lives. I told him the fact that you're sitting in front of me and telling me this without batting an eyelid, saying that, I feel like I've been struck by lightning, clearly your problem is exaggeration. Your problem is victimhood. Your problem is that you are looking at yourself as the person whom the rest of the world loves to hate, whom the rest of the world loves to trouble. And if you can put that aside and look at things in a more healthy fashion, in a more logical fashion, you will discover the world is not as bad as it is. Certainly, it has better things to do than conspire against you. We are at best individuals, big or small, and the world has many things on its plate. It is not getting together all the persons that inhabit it and saying, go after this person. Far from it. So let us not exaggerate our problems. Let us not unduly publicize our problems. You share it with people who have your confidence. You need sometimes a shoulder to weep on. You need someone in whom you can confide. It could be a professional consultant. Certainly reach out for help if you believe that that is what is required. There's no shame in it. In our country, unfortunately, some kind of stigma seems to get attached to people who are stressed, who show obvious signs of depression. and who don't conduct themselves as if they are in a happy state. There are developed countries in which the presidents visit their shrinks regularly by appointment in order to see that they're able to think right, that they are balanced, that they can go about their work in the manner that their electorate expects of them. There's no shame attached to that. So if we recognize that this is a problem and that there is no shame attached to it, address the problem by seeking help outside. And of course, there are time-honored techniques, time-tested techniques. Yoga certainly is one that practitioners have advocated and advised persons to opt for. I am not an expert and therefore I cannot share any specifics with you, but I do know that when you are facing a serious situation, if you sit by yourself and take a deep breath or a series of deep breaths, you will certainly arm yourself better to deal with the problem at hand. What we need to recognize is that the problem exists. You are not shying away from the problem. You are not pretending it doesn't exist. You are not ignoring it, but you're grappling with it with the tools and techniques that are available to you, that have been advised to you, so that you are on top of the situation and it does not dominate your thought process. Stress is not going to go away anytime soon. At least we haven't had any indications of that the world is going to be a stress-free place. Every day newer things are happening, newer forms of problems are arising, each of which gives rise to stress of a different kind. And we are in the thick of that universe. It's important, therefore, that we recognize the problem, deal with the problem, tell ourselves that we have what it takes to deal with this and emerge victorious in that encounter. I wish you a relatively stress-free life. I cannot wish you an absolutely stress-free life, but I do wish that each one of you addresses his or her stressful situation in the manner best suited to it, so that much of that becomes ancient history. You put it behind you, and what is left you grapple with. Use that as a positive factor. Stress sometimes drives positive action. You need some pressure to perform. If you don't have any pressure, you don't perform. It doesn't mean that deadlines, for example, are life-threatening, but deadlines are necessary so that you do your work in time. So if you see that as pressure, there is a problem. But if you see that as a positive factor, seemingly stressful, you might be able to use that to your advantage and get your work completed. I wish you all the best.